Gujarat. Proceeding further, I request Shri Arvind Agrawal, Director Journal, Sardar Patel Institute of Public Administration, to give his welcome address and introductory remarks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you all to the fourth public lecture in the series of such public lectures initiated by the Sardar Patel Institute of Public Administration together with the Pan IIT Gujarat chapter. It is a pleasure, indeed an honor for me to welcome Mr. Pavan Verma, whom I have the pleasure of introducing to you here today. But first, a few words about the public lecture series initiated by the Sardar Patel Institute of Public Administration. As a part of our diversified activities, we started in May 2012 this lecture series. The first we had by Dr. Alan Lichman, Professor of History in USA, who spoke about the US presidential elections. He has, to his credit, having forecast the last 7 US presidential elections with absolute precision. And he does it. He has written many books on the subject and done doctorate on the subject. The second, in June, was by Mr. Ashok Chawla, former Secretary Finance Government of India and currently the Chairman Competition Commission of India. A very enlightening session on competition law and the common man. The third we had in August, which was on doing business with China. As you are well aware, China has been the most talked of country in the last 2 or 3 decades. And it has already become the number 2 global economic power, inching towards becoming number 1. And for Gujaratis who are entrepreneurial and business-minded, doing business with China is a very, very important issue. China, some people feel, is a difficult or a different country to do business with. And that was the lecture we arranged for our entrepreneurs and other like-minded people. Today, friends, we have the honor to have with us Mr. Pavan Verma. Mr. Verma is a retired Indian Foreign Service officer of 1978 batch. Graduating in history and law, the writer-diplomat Mr. Pavan K. Verma joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1976. He was conferred an honorary doctorate degree by the University of Indianapolis, USA, for his contribution to the fields of diplomacy, literature, culture, and aesthetics. Mr. Verma has served in many important positions during his illustrious career. The last one, just before taking voluntary retirement, he was India's ambassador to Bhutan. A writer of depth and insight, he has written over a dozen books which you may have perused outside the auditorium. And from that we get to see the wide variety and range of subjects that he has tackled with. The India theme is the core of his love and his writing. Being Indian, be Indian, the great Indian middle class, and now Chanakya's new manifesto. But the most important, I feel, is that taking along the India theme, he has written on other diverse subjects such as on Ghalib, he has written on Lord Krishna, he has translated poetry of renowned poets of the country, including Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Kafi Azmi and Gulzar. He has written a book on the Havelis of Delhi, which shows his very diverse mind and knowledge. He has also translated poetries and written on other diverse subjects, which you may have seen. But what is most important for us is that he is not a pessimist. He does not just criticize. There are people, it's very easy to find faults and very easy to criticize. But Mr. Pavan Verma offers solutions. It is for us, for the citizens, to examine how far we can imbibe those solutions in our functioning, our day-to-day government work or outside government work. It is for the government functionaries to see how they can use the solutions to the best advantage for our country and our people. And this offering solutions, he has done excellently in his book, Chanakya's New Manifesto. How relevant is Chanakya's philosophy today, even 2,300 years later? Mr. Pavan Verma, after taking voluntary retirement from the Indian Foreign Service a few months ago, currently is the advisor culture to the Chief Minister of Bihar in the rank of Cabinet Minister. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, I would request you all to give a round of applause to Mr. Pavan Verma, and I welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Shri Arvind Agarwal to present a bouquet to Pavan Verma, sir.
Thank you.
Now I request Shri Sunil Parekh, founder and chairman, Pan IIT Gujarat Alumni Association, to take over and introduce today's topic, Ancient Civilization, Young Republic, a solution to the crisis.
Morning, friends. Let me also add my warm welcome to all of you and to Pavanji for sharing his time and being with us today. Today, I hope, will be a day of intellectual regeneration, rising up from the vast ocean of cynicism and malaise that has spread across our country, amongst all classes of people and across all ages of our people. People have felt very badly let down about how we have been repeatedly missing the golden opportunity to take our great nation to the potential it has for overall development, not just economic development, for uplifting our poor and vulnerable, and to take our rightful place on the high table in the global arena. After a spark that we saw in the mid-90s and then again in the mid-2000s, we seem to have now gravitated back to a level determined largely by our own collective inability to get our act together and stride forward in the world, with a much-needed strong confidence and a clear national purpose and strategy affecting our daily lives. We, the older ones here today, would remember that we have seen all these features when we were growing up and we were younger. Many of us feel so defeated inside that we are unable to feel the pride of even being called an Indian sometimes. However, charitable views, opinions regard this kind of a statement as rather harsh and point to many facets that are doing well, even though not sustainably. However, no one can deny that there has been a major failure everywhere of many things. An important aspect is that of governance and leadership at many levels in our country today. When our leaders fail us, when our governance fails us, when our judiciary falls prey to its own interest, when our own businesses have to be repeatedly reminded and even mandated about their social consciousness and their broader role in society, when our social leaders are maltreated and tarnished, many of us have lost hope and have in fact become silent witnesses. A bewildered citizen of India seeks a fresh ray of hope on this desolate landscape. It is in this context that I had originally suggested the name of Pavan Verma to Shri Arvind Agarwal to be invited and talk to us about some of these very fundamental issues that are affecting everything else today in our country. It is he who has been helping us in bringing fresh perspectives and original ideas and idealism in governance. I'm sure you will also share and feel with him the same sense of desolation, a feeling of having been let down and being swept aside by the unrepentant tide of time. But unlike us, he has taken up the task of looking at these issues afresh, researched them in detail, linked them to the venerable Chanakya's perennial thoughts on governance, and help us all seek solace and strength that only history can provide at such times. I hope today's lecture would be a very interesting lecture. So without much ado, may I request Shri Pavan Kumar Verma to share his views today. Pavanji.
Arvind Agarwal ji, Sunil Parekh, distinguished guests, dear friends, students. Let me begin by saying I feel very honored for the opportunity to be here, because while I speak in many forums across the country and abroad, this is in a sense the temple of the need for institutions to begin to analyze in detail what is the current situation and what needs to be done. It's an institute devoted to public administration with a remarkable legacy of seriousness, dedication and purpose. So it gives me very special pleasure to be here speaking to this audience. And I'm not going to give you a lecture. I want to think aloud with you, because in association there is the Pan IIT Forum, which in a sense represents excellence, in a sense represents achievement, in a sense represents the ability to begin to contemplate on what should be the possibilities of change. So this combination to me is particularly welcome, and I'm grateful to you for the opportunity to be here. Today, I think an ancient civilization is at cross purposes, at crossroads with a young nation. This civilization I refer to only because I ask myself this question: does India and do Indians have the possibility, the ability, the historical legacy, the creativity to reinvent themselves? I say to you that unless you are particularly blind, you must accept that change is essential. You cannot continue and lurch along in this way. This country's potential must be achieved. It must achieve its tryst with destiny. It cannot achieve that in the foreseeable future if we do not grapple and grasp the possibility of change. And so I ask myself, do we have the civilizational energy to be able to reinvent ourselves to face the challenges that the young republic is facing? We have had an ancient civilizational background which is marked by antiquity, continuity, peaks of refinement, assimilation and diversity. Sometimes we forget that this civilizational journey has been nothing short of remarkable. But it's important to remind ourselves, not in terms of xenophobia, not in terms of chauvinism, but in terms of the fact that there was a time when we could be the yardstick of excellence and be the originator of new concepts and ideas. That is important. If 600 years before the birth of Christ, there was a man called Bharata who wrote a compendium or book called the Natya Shastra. 600 years before the birth of Christ, when most people in many parts of the world had not come down from the trees. This book of 6,000 Sanskrit shlokas is not a mechanical description of the arts. This book is 6,000 Sanskrit shlokas which are a meditation on what constitutes the aesthetic experience, rasa. If this could be the level of creative endeavor so far in the past, I ask myself, what are our abilities today? Thousands of years ago, see, I want to say to you that the civilization of India has been a civilization which was based on the notion of maulik soch, the power of original thought. And not only original, audacious thought. If thousands of years ago, when our sages said, Ekam Satya Vipraha Bahuda Vedanti, there is one truth, the wise people call it by different names, that was not only an original thought, It was also an audacious thought because the dominant stereotypical feeling of those times was, leave alone truth being called by different names, only what we believe is the truth. If thousands of years ago, I'm giving random examples, I said I'm not going to give you a speech, but I want to share thoughts with you. If thousands of years ago our sages could say, Udara Charitanam Vasudeva Kutumbakam, for the broad-hearted, the entire world is a family, it was not only original thought, it was audacious thought. It was audacious because, again, the dominant feeling at that time was, leave alone the world, only those who constitute us are our family. We were capable of both original and audacious thinking. I was just discussing before I came in the remarkable achievements in mathematics and astronomy. We were the yardstick of excellence. I visited the other day the ruins of a remarkable monument in this country, Nalanda. 1200 years ago, the Harvard of Asia. 2,000 professors, 10,000 students. With students coming from as far west as Turkey and as far east as Japan. Read Hyun Sang's account of the quality of educational discourse, the interrogation, the query, the questioning, the response, the nature of the curriculum, the encouragement to independent thinking. That was the yardstick of excellence. Chanakya himself, and I'll come to him later. 1500 years before Machiavelli, the first man in the world who wrote a holistic, thought-out, systemic, organized political treatise in the world. It did not happen in South America or Papua New Guinea, it happened in India. Are we capable of reinventing ourselves? Any field of creative expression, sir. Any field. I don't know, many of you have been to Ellora. And there is a Kailash temple. And that Kailash temple represents originality and audaciousness in architecture, which has few rivals in the world. The concept was to take an entire mountain and to excavate it from top down. Excavating 200,000 tons of stone to build a temple of exquisite beauty to precise geometrical symmetry. It's there. I asked Shashi Tharoor the other day, why do you sit in Shri Pavan then? Dump of an office. We were capable of it. We were capable of it. And with the coming of Islam, the Muslims came as conquerors and proselytizers, but there is something in this civilization that ultimately we developed that syncretic Ganga Jamuni culture, of which among many other examples, the most outstanding example still is the Taj Mahal, which is such a fusion of both Hindu and Islamic motifs, bringing together, in a sense, the best of both cultures. We were part of that journey. And we had the capacity of dialogue, dissent and dissent. I mean, the other day I was asked on some television program, why is it that the political class has become so intolerant to criticism? And there were people from other parties as well. I said, भाई, अब जब ये आदत हो गई है कि अपनी ही पार्टी में कोई किसी को कुछ नहीं बोल सकता लीडर को, तो बाहर की क्यों सुनेंगे? कल मैं बोल रहा था एब्सोल्यूट लीडर, एब्सोल्यूट फॉलोअर्स, एब्सोल्यूट सब्जेक्ट्स. बात पर वहां जुबान कटती है, वो कहें और सुना करे कोई. But there was a time, I mean, thoughts are coming to me in trend of Shankaracharya, who revived Hinduism after Buddhism was at its ascent. And Shankaracharya, who revived Hinduism, Shankaracharya writes, Name raga dvesha, name moha lobha, mado naiva may naiva matsarya bhava, na dharmo na chartho na kamo na moksha, chidananda rupa, shrivoham shivo. The very reviver of Hinduism says that the four Purusharthas of Hinduism, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, none of them exist. He demolishes even as he builds. That is the quality of this civilization. And this is the state from which Mahatma Gandhi came. Originality, audacious thought. This man could adopt a strategy of ahimsa to take on the most powerful enemy, the most powerful empire of the world. That was audacious thinking, it was original thinking, and it succeeded. Because of its capacity of being based on Maulik Soch, the audacity of thinking, is the young republic capable of it? We have to ask ourselves. I cannot rewind history. No one can to take it back to the golden age of the Guptas. अब तो golden age of the Gandhis or NDA or UP ही तो होगी, or when whatever other combination. So we have to deal with the situation. I wrote this book, Chanakya's New Manifesto, to resolve the crisis within India because I felt there needs to be a holistic response, a compilation of ideas which begin to examine the subject of change, on the assumption that change is essential. See, you can shut your eyes. You can put your head in the sand. You can be a great believer and worshipper of some deity and believe a solution will parachute in from the sky. But hoga nahi. So we have to find the change. We draw the inspiration from a civilizational journey. Are we capable of it ourselves today? Chanakya, when I began to study and read him, he had some qualities. The first is, he believed in identifying what the real problem is. What happens today is that we get mesmerized by the symptoms. We discuss them in drawing rooms every day. But you have to put your finger ki, what is the real problem? Chanakya believed in leadership. Chanakya believed in talent. He could not suffer fools gladly. Chanakya believed, and this is the myth that you must understand that is wrong when you read the Arthashastra. Chanakya believed in the welfare of the people as a whole. Chanakya believed in economic prosperity. Constitutions mean nothing if the treasury is empty. Chanakya believed that systems should be just and those who commit wrong must be punished adequately under the law. Chanakya believed in analyzing systems. We get obsessed with individuals. You must analyze systems. Because when you analyze a system and then know that what is the problem with the system, then your response is systemic. So you must analyze systems. And Chanakya believed that ultimately, if it is a choice, the nation comes before the individual. Now these are qualities. You may agree or you disagree with them. He had clarity of mind, rigor of intellectual discipline, to see a problem, to juxtapose it to a situation, to rigorously analyze it, to propose a solution, and then the courage and resolve to follow it, to achieve it. These are qualities that I admire today. There is not everything in the Arthashastra that needs endorsement. Nor do I need to go into the minutiae of the Arthashastra, because it is contextual to its times. I am drawing the inspiration of the person who wrote it for his methodology, for his intellectual vigor, for his vision, for his clarity of mind. That is what is important. We need it in India today. There is too much waffle going on. That rigor of analysis is missing. So for these reasons, I called it Chanakya's new manifesto to resolve the crisis within India. And it deals with 5 subjects which I believe are at the core of the crisis. Governance, the functioning of democracy, corruption, national security, and fifthly, how do we build a genuinely inclusive society? I believe these 5, you can have a laundry list of many other problems. But essentially, I believe other problems are subsumed under these 5. And then the idea was not to merely describe the symptoms. I read books after books where people restrict themselves to the symptoms. तो वो तो हमको भी मालूम है, हजूर आपकी अंग्रेजी मुझसे बेहतर होगी, आप बेहतर लिख लीजिए. Governance, the functioning of democracy, corruption, national security, and the building of a genuinely inclusive society. Where was I? You broke my train of thought. You see, I decided that if we take up these issues, then you must take the issue and then come out with a solution. As Arvindji said, I am an optimist. कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, पर कब तक उभरेगी कौन जानता है. बाद मरने के मेरे बाहर आई. How long? How much wasted potential? Even if the system does not collapse, please try to compute the lost potential. Year after year after year. Who is going to be responsible? In the ebb and flow of life and daily routine, we believe if we close our eyes, तो कल तो शायद सुबह अच्छी होगी. But please understand this, and I say this with seriousness, and I say it as an optimist. This is not a crisis about an individual. It is not a crisis about one party. It is not a crisis about one international economic crisis. And it is not a crisis which will go away with the next general elections. A systemic crisis requires a systemic response. Now, why is it systemic? You see, the real problem is, and I do not have time to go into the details of the book. The book is available. Please take the trouble to read it, because I always tell even the young, I meet the young a lot and I tell them, mere anger, mere alienation, mere discontent, even if you express it on Rasaina Hill next to Rashtrapati Bhavan, means nothing. It will be, if it is just that, it will be co-opted, subsumed, derailed and taken over by the establishment. Anger must engage with ideas. Then it becomes a potent force. Then you produce something. So what is the problem? So you have to read. I wish I could have written Chanakya's new manifesto as a love story or a romance or easy fiction. But not possible. These are concrete situations. I will still say with great humility it's readable. But I can't make it sexy, It's straight and simple facts about our life which we must engage with. Now, what is the real problem where governance and democracy? Put your finger on the problem. I have put it on it as I see it. Today, as far as both these areas are concerned, we are in a situation which was not envisaged by our constitution makers. Our constitution makers envisaged a situation where democratic elections will throw up a party with a stable majority, which will then have 5 years to govern, to give back to the people why they voted them in power in the first place. Now for the last 15 years, I am talking of Central, for the last 15 years we have seen that one Banyan party rule is over and we have coalitions of 22 or 24 member parties, either with wafer-thin majorities or precarious majorities. As a result of it, all energies go to political management and survival, and very little is left to governance. I am not against the proliferation of parties. In a sense, it is the democratization of politics. There was a situation where the Congress party, as the Banyan party, kept getting repeated majorities in parliament. But there were other voices waiting to be heard. Today they have a chance. I was once in the Prime Minister's office, and when cabinet meetings were held, there was one MP who was from a party of which he was the sole MP. Ek aadmi ki party thi. But majority was also only one. So, whatever happened, people heard him. That is not the issue. I am not against that. I am against the fact that when so many parties have arisen and governments are formed by 22, 24 member coalitions, what do we need to do with the system so that it becomes a functioning and effective means of governance as well? Because if all energies go to political management and survival, तो फिर आम आदमी का क्या होगा? That is the problem. You cannot have governance without democracy, because governance will become authoritarian. And you cannot have democracy without governance, because that takes away the very faith for which people vote in elections. And the amazing alchemy that happens is that when governments are unstable inherently, even when they govern, they adopt short-term populist policies. They are living for the next week, not for the next few years. They adopt populist policies and refuse to engage with long-term solutions to foundational problems. Who suffers? And it changes the nature of the opposition also. The opposition, instead of being a constructive critique of government in the interests of the people, becomes what is called a predatory opposition. It is less concerned with the merits of an issue or demerits. It is more concerned what is the potential of that issue to either embarrass or topple the government. So all around, all the constituents then produce the great sound and fury of democracy, but alas, not the light and enlightenment of governance. Kya kare? That is the question before the nation. I propose a solution. I propose a solution which is doable under the law. A great deal of it is based on recommendations already made by the Election Commission. And essentially that is that the voter cannot be taken for a ride anymore. I say to you that if coalitions have become the norm, Arvindji, I hope this is not becoming too political, but it's all about public administration. I say to you that if coalitions have become the norm, by and large, I ask all coalitions to announce who their constituents will be prior to the elections. You don't have to agree with me. Please come up with better solutions. That is my feeling. I was told the other day that no, coalitions can be formed after the elections. I said that happens mostly, if not entirely, when individual parties fight. Then they are short of a majority. Then they look to form a coalition. But here people are going ab initio with coalitions. Why should the voter have a situation where he votes for party A because he doesn't like party B, then finds after the elections that party A and party B are sleeping in the same bed? Why? Who has been fooled? कुछ तो सिद्धांत होंगे, कुछ आपकी सोच होगी जिसमें, अच्छा सोच अपने आप तो आती नहीं है पॉलिटिकल क्लास को. So I say that once you have this pre-announced coalition, among many other things, it must at least do two things. One, it must announce who its prime ministerial candidate will be. The Prime Minister is a very important fulcrum of the polity. You cannot have an individual chosen because of intra-coalition compromises and put there, who cannot govern, who doesn't have leadership qualities, who has no vision. Or even if he has, it has long gone to sleep. And secondly, that entire coalition must pledge itself to a new document which I call the governance agenda. This is not the manifesto. The manifesto promises everything under the sun and sky. The Election Commission has provided a prototype of a workman-like document, not long specific, on what will be your governance agenda if you come to power. The people are entitled to know before their vote is taken for a ride. I wish to know who is it that is going to be part of this coalition, who its leader will be, and what its governance agenda will be. I am not your cannon fodder so that you come to power. I am the voter. I am entitled to know. Now on this basis, if say that a coalition comes to power, pledged prior to the elections to be part of the coalition and pledged to a governance agenda placed before the people, and having received the people's vote on that basis, it comes to power. I propose that all the members of that coalition have a lock-in period for 3 years when none can withdraw support. It is very much like the anti-defection law. That is also an infringement of absolute democratic choice. But you introduced it in order to make democracy functional, where you curbed an individual proclivity in order to preserve the effectiveness and ethics and rectitude of this polity as a whole. You've come together, you've pledged together, you wish to... Now, no one party can hold that to ransom for a minimum period of 3 years lock-in period. At least then for 3 years, you have, without the threat of political instability, the possibility of governance. People can take decisions. I was told, will this not become tyrannical? I said, in the past, when you had one party with 401 seats come to power, how was it different? Nobody could topple it. It could take any decisions almost under the sun. It had such an absolute majority. So what is wrong in creating a situation which is a democratic artifice, ek zariya hai, that you hold together this coalition and say, you have pledged to this governance of agenda. It's not 30 years that you must be brothers with each other. 3 saal. And after that, if you wish to leave, you can form a new government, but only for a remaining 2-year period, where again there will be a lock-in period for 2 years. But the voter does not forget, if you left a well-functioning coalition government only for opportunist reasons for 2 years, it will punish you. That is one idea, among many others. But then how do we otherwise resolve it? Otherwise, next year we have elections. I can guarantee you, the horse trading, the multiplicity of coalition partners, everything will happen except the promise of governance. In democracy, there are many other challenges. The biggest is electoral reform. Biggest, that is the beej of both corruption and so much that is ill. This evening I am speaking to judges and lawyers in Delhi. I am going to tell them, koi aur nahi karega to aap hi initiative lijiye. All the proposals for change are already recommended by the Election Commission. I was once speaking, sir, at the Lal Bahadur Academy, which I go every year to address, and before me, Veerappa Moily Saab had spoken. Now he has authored a report, an 800-page report called the Second Administrative Reforms Commission. So I began by saying that you just heard a speaker who has not read 3 pages of his own report. It lies in Godam mein padi rehti. Best ideas. कोई पढ़ने को तैयार नहीं है, कोई सोचने को तैयार नहीं है, तो भाई देश का उद्धार कहां से होगा? One provision for black money and politics. One provision. Today there is a law which says that political parties can receive donations by not naming the donor provided the donation is less than 20,000 rupees. Parties have collected hundreds of crores without knowing where it's come from. They say, sabne sab 19,999. The Election Commission has recommended time and again that this law be repealed. And it can be. And all bank, गड़बड़ी और थोड़ी बहुत तो ये तो बड़ा मुश्किल है हिंदुस्तान में पूरा हटाना. But systemic change means all financial transactions must be done through the bank. Today there is technology which can digitally track most financial movements. Your party's accounts will be vetted by a chartered accountant appointed by the Election Commission and the Enforcement Directorate. Your accounts will be on website. It will be under the RTI. If you are caught, both the donor and the party will be penalized, including deregistering. Steps that can be taken, that have been recommended by the Election Commission. The Election Commission tells me that every time it goes up to the Standing Committee of Parliament, every time they send up 23 proposals, the Standing Committee of Parliament sends them all back except adopting 2, that policemen should wear longer shirts and wear better caps. To all these proposals, गालिब की शेर याद है, हर एक बात पे कहते हो तुम के तू क्या है, तुम ही कहो कि ये अंदाज़े गुफ्तगू क्या है. They propose, they dispose. I was telling a vast gathering of students the other day, do nothing else. Use your greatly magnified powers through the cyber world. 1 million petitions that before the next election, Parliament must fulfill its promise of convening a special session of Parliament only on electoral reform, criminalization of politics. What is the problem? I was discussing this 2 days ago with a Supreme Court judge. He said, yes, it should be done, it's doable. Today, what's the situation? A politician accused of a criminal act, he remains qualified to be in democratic politics unless he is proven guilty. In other words, you are innocent unless proven guilty. So, a particular chief minister was accused in 95. He had to resign. He thought his wife is the best substitute. He made her the chief minister. Subsequently, thanks to our dilatory judicial proceedings, he became the railway minister of India. You have to resign there, but you have not yet ever been proven guilty. In 2004, his party becomes part of the ruling coalition. The case is conveniently given to CBI. The CBI in 2012 only frames charges. I'm sure he'll occupy some more cabinet posts. So the principle is very simple. Where democratic politics are concerned, if there is a criminal charge, I have proposed this. If there is a criminal charge, and the court sees prima facie reason to frame charges, you are debarred from democratic politics unless proven innocent. Because in 2004, there was a hue and cry because 28% of our parliament consisted of parliamentarians with criminal records. In 2009, after that hue and cry, the figure went up to 33%, of which 14%. By the way, see, you have to stand up proud and say, I am an Indian. 14% have heinous crimes against them of murder, abduction, rape, dacoity. And they are there making laws for you. And they are saying we are innocent unless proven guilty. So you have to change this. You have to put it on its head. And you have to have fast-track courts for it so that decisions are taken in 4 months, the number of appeals are reduced. Once convicted, even if you go on appeal, you are debarred from politics, because in the temple of democracy, only those who are indisputably clean in terms of their public profile have the right to represent Indians. That is the requirement. It can be done. It's already proposed. Take one guess who is preventing it from happening. It's the members of parliament themselves. So we have to think. Similarly, the absence of inner party democracy. The way our parliament functions. See, please start thinking. In the entire history of the House of Commons in the United Kingdom, Parliament has not been adjourned for a single day. Now we are coming to a situation where we have to count the number of days when Parliament is not adjourned in India. People walk into the well of the house. Any immovable object is a lethal missile, including the shoes you wear. It's a laughing stock because it comes live on national television. What is the impact it's having on our youth? Are we a banana republic that we must keep watching this day in and day out? This is partly an educational institution also. 7 bills in the last session. Not one could be passed because the entire session was a washout. It's not a laughing matter. And so go to the website and click the powers of the speaker. You will be surprised and shocked. The presiding officers of both houses have the powers to run a disciplined house. If somebody speaks out of turn, that person can be named. If 3 times named, has to withdraw. She has marshals, she has powers which are amazing. She can suspend a member for the duration of the house on a repeat offence for the entire session of the house without pay and allowances. These powers are there. The speaker draws her salary from the consolidated fund. Her tenure is unaffected. Why are they not being exercised? What was an aberration to begin with becomes routine tomorrow, and third, it's as if it doesn't happen. What is the nature of democracy? It can be done. You have to start changing. You have to put pressure. But I'm not talking of the current incumbents, but normally the speaker is thinking, let me keep everyone happy, I'll become Vice President of India. And the Vice President is thinking, let me keep I'll become President of India. And meanwhile, the rest of India can go to dogs. I clarified, I'm not speaking of present incumbents, but that becomes the trend. And the nation is held to the spectacle day in and day out. So there are problems. On corruption, I don't have enough time. Please read the book. On corruption, I propose a 5-point architecture against corruption, which first of all includes electoral reform, which is the beej of corruption. Jab aadmi या पार्टी सत्ता ही करप्शन के जरिए से आती है या थ्रू ब्रेकिंग ऑफ लॉज, तो उससे ये उम्मीद रखना कि वो खुद स्वच्छ और साफ होगी, ये नामुमकिन है। बुनियादी रिफॉर्म वहां चाहिए। Transparency in the disposal of all government-owned resources. A draft bill is pending where everything is put in the sunlight through the website, and you have an independent transparency regulator to oversee large bids. ये संभव है। Reducing or rather increasing the neutral intervention of technology. होता क्या है कि you can't judge. You cannot ever base a system of reform on individual proclivity. हमारी कुछ फितरत ऐसी है कि अगर मौका मिल सके और पकड़े न जाने की पूरी उम्मीद हो तो कहीं ना कहीं पैसा बना लेंगे। This is not Scandinavia. Because there is a moral relativism to corruption. I always say that those who criticize corruption in the evening, corruption in high places, अगर दिन में कोई फाइल निपटाई है या चालान में छूटने की पॉसिबिलिटी है तो कर लेते। दे हार्मोनियस स्किज़ोफ्रेनिक्स, कोई टेंशन नहीं है दिमाग में, ये दोनों को एग्जिस्ट करते। तो don't depend on individual proclivity. Put in place systems. One system, which now the central government is thinking, put pressure for it to come about strongly. Right to Public Services Act in Madhya Pradesh and Bihar. Simple. Remove the human intermediary. Please go and study it. 12 departments, 52 services. Those services where the individual has to interface on a maximum basis with the state. Services are mentioned. Online applications, offline applications. Bihar has appointed as many as 70 IT experts, some with salaries higher than Cabinet Secretary of India, from the private sector to monitor each application. Against each service, the number of days required to render the service is mentioned. And for each day of delay, the concerned official who is mentioned pays 500 rupees from his pocket. Dandaniti. 2 crore some applications have been disposed of in time. And you don't need to pay a tout to buy a railway ticket, you can do it online. Neutral intervention of technology. Fourthly, you need to be able to provide timely and predictable deterrent punishment to those who break the law. I was asking a group of students, what is the incentive for me not to commit rape? If I do it, if I can ring up my father or uncle ki FIR in a register हो जाए तो victim को browbeat कर लो, वो नहीं हो तो prosecution को खरीद लो, वो नहीं हो तो bail arrest हो जाओ तो bail ले लो। वो भवरी देवी case, people are out on bail for 15 years. The appeal is pending in the High Court, for God's sake. What is the disincentive? Timely and deterrent punishment, but that is impossible unless you have judicial reform. देखिए, सोच का मतलब यह है कि रिगर से चलिए। Allahabad High Court has 50 vacancies of High Court judges, 50 in one High Court. क्यों? नहीं भरा, कर लेंगे। The only judiciary in the world which appoint itself, 50 vacancies and 50 lakh cases pending. How are you going to have punishment for anything? So judicial reform is essential. I propose a whole series of steps for that. And lastly, a Lokpal. But a Lokpal without prosecution and investigative powers means nothing. I discussed that. On national security, I don't have time, but it's important because these are the challenges. The country in the world's most troubled neighborhood. 2 potentially hostile states. Externally sponsored terrorism. Homegrown terrorism. 7,500 kilometers of a coastline, 15,000 kilometers of neighboring line boundaries with 8 neighboring states, almost close to 8,000 kilometers of disputed boundary with 2 states, 200 districts, 40,000 square kilometers of your country no longer under your control because it is under the Naxalites. In such a state, the infrastructure of national security is nothing short of scandalous, be it foreign policy, be it intelligence, or be it defense. The details are given, the solutions are there for you to read and see. Please read them. And lastly, the building of an inclusive society. I say to you that it is unacceptable after so many years of our independence and our claim to be a civilized society, that the largest number of the abjectly poor in the world are in India. It is unacceptable that the largest number of the people who can't read and write are in India. It is unacceptable that the largest number of malnutrition children in the world, including more than sub-Saharan Africa, are in India. We cannot claim to be a civilized country. We have to do something about it. I question the current strategies being employed by the state to end this situation, which is state altruism, which takes money and throws it top down as a short-term populist measure, setting up an entire scaffolding of corruption from top down, with ultimately only a fraction reaching the beneficiary. I question the policy of enduring solutions being found only through doles. If 60% of our population lives off agriculture, and in that population are the largest number of the poor, the real reason for poverty is that for 20 years now agriculture has only grown at 2%. We need a quantum jump in agricultural productivity. Now food is being thrown down first from Food Corporation of India, which commits genocide every year. Mount it wastes, and then down some seep, completely leaking channel down. I question that. I believe we need to change it. I believe we need to change the nature of our society. Nowhere in the world exists so many insensitive people to the plight of the poor than in India. हमें दिखते नहीं है. गरीबी और उनकी दरिद्रता हमारे जिंदगी का हिस्सा नहीं है. जब तक एक केयरिंग सोसाइटी नहीं बनेगी, कोई भी लॉ हो, अच्छा सा अच्छा हो, सबवर्ट हो जाएगा. पर हमारे सरकार ने कुछ आज तक किया ही नहीं है. इनफैक्ट इफ यू वांट टू ओपन एन एनजीओ, अगर आप परोपकार करना चाहते हैं, अगर आप सोसाइटी को वापस वो देना चाहते हैं जो उस सोसाइटी ने आपको दिया, द करंट रेजिमेन ऑलमोस्ट लुक्स अपॉन यू एज अ क्रिमिनल इन द मेकिंग. द लॉज आर सो बैड. There is no attempt to create stakeholders in society, no attempt to partner with them, no encouragement to go beyond the state and to build proud citizens, proud to contribute back to their society. We have to change the mosaic of our society. Nothing will work otherwise. And all of these things require leadership. Leadership is essential also. But leadership requires an enabling system. आप लीडर बहुत अच्छा ले आइए और नीचे से किसी ने स्टूल खींच दिया, क्या होगा? It's what I'm saying is both are essential, but leadership is important. I remember a couplet, I think it's Iqbal, तू इधर उधर की न बात कर, तू बता कि काफिले क्यों लुटे. तू इधर उधर की न बात कर, तू बता कि काफिले क्यों लुटे. मुझे रहजनों से गरज नहीं, रहजन आर प्लंडरर्स, आई डोंट केयर. मुझे रहजनों से गरज नहीं, तेरी रहबरी का सवाल है. रहबरी इज लीडरशिप. व्हाट डिड यू डू? सो essentially I say to you, to come back to my point, an ancient civilization is at the crossroads of a young republic. The republic faces challenges. Can we on our own or drawing inspiration from the past, reinvent this young republic so that it makes its real tryst with destiny. Because again, as Arvindji said, I am an optimist. If we do, this nation's potential is unlimited. What we can achieve. And I say, request Arvindji that some of the suggestions given in this book, they are in the form of a manifesto. Your institute is ideally placed to perhaps create some working groups to study them. We must have a nationwide debate on change. People have to engage with ideas. ये civilization मौलिक सोच क्या है, फिर से हमको उस रास्ते पे चलना है. Otherwise, we are in for deep trouble. Believe me, this demographic dividend of India will unravel on the streets. In the last 2 years, there is a 20% contraction in the job market. तो कहाँ जाएंगे भाई? But if we can make the change, this is a great nation, a great civilization. Let me end by one of my favorite couplets of Ghalib. मत पूछ कि क्या हाल है. If we can do this, then मत पूछ कि क्या हाल है मेरा तेरे पीछे, तू देख कि क्या रंग है तेरा मेरे आगे. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you once again. Now this forum is open for question answers. I request Shri Sunil Parekh to moderate this session.